All right, welcome to Quixotic Heights, where we explore bold ideas, unconventional journeys, and the pursuit of meaningful success. Today's guest is someone who has been on the front lines of the hiring world for years. Frances Moore is a seasoned career consultant and recruiter who has reviewed thousands of resumes, conducted countless interviews, and coached professionals at every stage of their career on how to land not just a job, but the right job. And she has seen what works, what fails, and what truly makes a candidate unforgettable in a world where algorithms screen resumes before humans ever see them, where competition is fierce and attention spans are short. Frances brings clarity, strategy, and hard earned wisdom. So, if you've ever wondered why your resume isn't getting callbacks, how to ace the interview, or how to confidently pursue your dream role, this conversation is for you. Welcome, Frances.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while because you and I also met in the recruiting realm. Um, and remind me, was it T-Mobile? Was it
Yep.
Microsoft? Was it?
Nope, it was T-Mobile.
It was T-Mobile. Gosh, okay. Yeah, and you and I haven't connected for a while, so this is great. Well, let's start off with your quixotic dream. What was the defining moment for you to be where you are today?
Well, it kind of goes back to my mother, actually. I worked at Microsoft, and well, before I was working at Microsoft, I was trying to get into Microsoft. And getting in there is you have to know somebody to kind of get your foot in the door. And my mom came out to visit, and I was telling her my issues. I had been trying for weeks, kept getting denied, wouldn't hear from anybody. And so over that weekend that she was visiting, she redid my resume and she explained to me every piece of it. My mom has over 20 something years in HR recruiting, that sort of thing. She was a college recruiter. She was the highest Black female in her company, at the end of it. So, end of her career there. And so she saw thousands of resumes a day and conducted many interviews as much as me. And by the way, my mom and I have the same name. So, I had to follow in her footsteps. So, she redid my resume. I submitted it to a job and I got the job. So
That's
I
amazing.
supported, yeah, so I supported 55 managers and what started out as an $11 million budget that went up to 15.5 million after a year because we spent all of our budget. Well, inside Microsoft, people tend to send you resumes and, hey, can you take a look at this? Can you take a look at this? And I started redoing people's resumes, based on what my mom taught me. And they were all getting the jobs and they absolutely loved it. So I think what really got me was after I left Microsoft, at one point I was working for Washington Mutual, and the security guard, when you come in the front door, there's always, a reception and security guard before you get through the locked door. And him and I would always chat it up, whatever. So one day he was asking me if I could take a look at his resume because he wanted to get a higher paying job. And I said, sure. So I took a look at it. I actually redid it, gave it back to him. And I don't know, a week or two later, he tells me that he was on his way to work. He saw or not a department store, but a clothing store, like a men's, high-end clothing store in downtown Seattle. And there was a help wanted sign. So he went in, got an on the spot interview, gave him the resume. The guy was impressed by the resume and hired him
Mm.
on the spot.
Woohoo. I love those success stories.
Yeah.
And Microsoft is, let's just start there. Like that is a matrix, a black hole. And you and I have both worked there. So, we understand the volume that comes through, and it truly is who you know. But what
Mm-hmm.
made your resume stand out? And was it a recruiting position that you were applying for?
Actually, no, it was an administrative position that I was applying for. What made me stand out was the way my mother um, told me about each piece of the resume was what she looked for when she went through thousands of resumes a day.
Mm-hmm.
So she was, little things like if it reads like a book, she doesn't have time for that. Recruiters basically take about 8 to 10 seconds to decide whether they're going to move forward with you or not.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to make it visually appealing, white space in there so it was easy to read, um, balanced so your eyes naturally go back and forth. Um, through the page, and then also making sure that you have the skills in there that they're looking for. But the cover letter, jumping to that, a lot of people change their resumes to meet the job, and it's actually the cover letter that points to what the job is looking for. So
Mm.
you're kind of guiding them to your resume and saying, here's where I have this, here's where I have this, here's where I have this.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that kind of that helps. But if you know what an employer is looking for, you can kind of target, your present yourself to that
Yeah.
role.
Yeah. And,
Mhm.
just getting eyes on your resume and then getting called in for an interview. Well, first, usually the recruiter will screen you and then they'll pass you on. Um, are there any tips or tricks or whatever to present yourself in the best light when you're actually in the interview process to nail that job?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of different things. So getting a job is like a dance. It's how I like to look at it. You have to find the job, make sure that you're qualified for it, right? Then you have to create a resume, cover letter, get it off to them. So you have to get their attention. Once they get your attention, then or you get their attention and they call you. At that point, you're kind of dancing. So
Mm.
at that point, you're trying to wow them with your personality, right? And it's not like, hey, I'm Joe Blow, whatever, I'm hire me. Not one of those. It's more of they want to hear about your skills and how it relates to that position. What makes you different? Why should we move forward with you? And depending on your personality, if you speak clearly, if you ask questions, things like that, they're looking for somebody that can wants a career, not just a job, not just a paycheck. It's
Yeah.
a career opportunity. So they're listening for that. So
Yeah.
if they feel that, you have that one moment to sell yourself to that person without, giving them your whole life story,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I find that sometimes when I'm interviewing a candidate back in the day, when I worked for recruiting and HR, it's like you ask them a question and they go on all these tangents. And I think it's really important to be very succinct and pause, think about it before you answer the question, right? And answer what they want to hear. But as so for someone who is really good at their job and what they do, but just are so horrible at interviewing or, going through that process, do you have any advice for somebody like that?
Yep. I actually had a client she was terrified to go to an interview. And she was completely changing her career. So she went from a lead senior level flight attendant of 20 some odd years to working in the court system.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's a big change, right? Kind of an advocate. So she got the interview after I did her resume, of course. And she ended up calling me on the way there. So I had to kind of talk her through it. But it was basically when you get there, take a moment to breathe. Take a couple of deep breaths. Talk yourself that I got this. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
Mhm.
So it's your decision ultimately on whether this is going to be a company you want to work for or not. So pay attention when you're at that interview. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't rush through the interview. Keep your answers short but direct, get to the point quickly. Um, and
Yeah,
don't be afraid if they ask you a question you don't understand it, don't be afraid to say, can you repeat that? Or can you give me a second? Let me think about that real quick to
yeah,
give
because
you,
it's
correct
okay to
answer.
circle back. Absolutely okay to circle
Yeah.
back to the question. And, I find that it's also intimidating, right? When you have a panel interview or, you are being interviewed for multiple jobs at the same time, or you go through 3 rounds of interviews before you finally meet the hiring manager. Um, what are some tips you think in terms of what you should have in the bag when you go to these interviews? Like, should you know what should you know about the company? What should you know about the people you're interviewing with? What kind of questions should you be asking? Because I agree, it's more of a dialogue, right? It shouldn't be an interrogation.
Right, exactly. And I think that's
Yeah,
why people freak out because they think it's an interrogation.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that they should know about the company. They should definitely have researched about the company before they got there, right? They be based on that. There should be a line of questions that you could come up with. You can
mhm,
also come up with questions during the interview. So whatever they say, it might generate a question for you to ask. 3 things that I always say to stay away from: money,
mm,
benefits, and perks.
mhm. Yeah, I
Never
would
talk
agree
about
with that.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah, never talk about those because it gives them the wrong impression. It's not that you're looking for a career, it's what can I get out of this? So you
yeah,
want to, in the interview, you want to let them know what you can bring to the table that's going to help them make money or, be a complete asset to them,
mm,
and wanting to help, be a team player, that sort of thing. So you have to find your uniqueness. You have to really thoroughly understand the position and make sure you talk about things that are part of that position, like,
yeah,
hey, do you have this skill? Well, yeah, I use that skill. Not very many people use that skill, but yeah, I use that skill. You
yeah.
can go into how you used it, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of usually behavioral questions, right? Or the most
Hmm.
intimidating ones are like, go to the chalkboard or the whiteboard, write out, map out, design whatever. You're like thinking on the spot, and it is pretty scary. But I agree with you, having that conversation about, benefits and salary and stuff, not the right time until you're actually presented an offer, right? And then you know that they're very sold on you. Then you have a little bit more leverage and you can say, this is what I'm making, this is what I'm looking for, and then there's that dance that you talked about where you're negotiating back and forth.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I find also a little bit intimidating is what to wear to an interview. Am I
Oh yeah.
overdressed? Am I underdressed? What's safe to wear?
Right. Yeah. Couple of tricks on that one. You can always go to their website and see what they're wearing, kind of, but from pictures, maybe on Facebook or Indeed or LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Yeah. Where you can kind of see group pictures or celebratory things. And then the goal is you want to dress one step above that.
Mm,
So for women, you can wear a skirt, you can wear slacks, you can wear flats, you can wear heels. You don't want to wear something that's too flashy. Um, you don't want to wear a lot of dangly earrings. I remember this one girl that I interviewed. She came in and I don't know why, but I kept staring at her mouth whenever
mm.
she talked. I figured out that she had a tongue ring, but
Mm,
it just kept looking different to me.
yeah,
She
it can
had
be
she had
distracting.
She had two. She had two back to back. But that was all I focused on. The
Mm,
entire interview was like, what is that? So when I'm interviewing somebody, I want to see you. I want to see your face. I don't want to hear your bracelets jingling, your earrings jingling, your bright red lipstick, things like that. I want to see you and I want to talk to you. So
yeah,
tone down everything else. Be pretty much traditional when you go to an interview. Because once you get the job, then you can dress however you want or whatever their rules are. But
yeah,
getting there is the first impression. So,
yeah, I agree. But there's that balance too between being yourself, authentically you, but then also not being so distracting where the interviewers can't focus on what you're saying and what you can bring to the table. Um,
right.
and that's where you come in as a consultant, right? Because um, can you give me a story that where, somebody was just they had to completely pivot, from how they presented themselves with you versus how they ended up presenting themselves, during the interview process. Do you have a story like that?
Um, Probably.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, I've interviewed so many people, it's
Yeah.
hard to think of one specific one. I do know that there was a girl that I worked with one time, and she was kind of a short, little petite thing, always had collars and long sleeves, and I couldn't figure out, I thought she was this little preppy thing or whatever. And one day, I think she came to my house because I was helping her. And she came with a t-shirt. She had tattoos all the way up to her neck. She
Mm.
had full sleeves. And I was like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
She goes, oh, my husband tattoos me. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, why don't you show them at work? I mean,
Mm.
it's 110 degrees outside and you got long sleeves and collar up to here. Well,
Right.
I just don't like how people look at me, or treat me.
Yeah.
So it's a
It.
shame that she couldn't show her own style,
Mhm.
you know?
I think it's important to kind of like win in Rome, right? Like you got to kind of just blend in first and follow the rules and then figure out what the boundaries are and how far you can push it, and
Exactly.
let your skills and your objectives, whatever, speak for themselves, right? So you have that
Yes.
reputation as a performer before you full on like show your tattoos or piercings or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's break down the resume for a little bit. So back in my day, when I was in recruiting, like I always told, the job seekers, don't put what your objectives are on the resume, right? Because we all have the same objectives in general, and the company's like, we don't care. It's what you can do
Yeah.
for me. So is there like a profile or what do we do nowadays to kind of structure our resume?
So the objective thing that you're talking about has been changed now. It's called an executive summary.
Mm,
So what happened with the objective was they were targeting themselves for one specific position. So it's like, I'm a salesperson. The only thing I want to do is sales related.
mhm.
Well, then if you're applying for an admin job and all you want to do is sales, it's like, yeah, you're not going to be happy in my role, So I'm going to pass on you. Even though you have 20 years of admin experience,
Mhm.
I'm still going to pass on you because that's what you told me you want to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the executive summary now is more of a description about what you've done, like a little summary about all your experience. So, just a few sentences, no more than five, I would say, but targeting on your skills and what you bring to the table. You're a professional,
Mhm.
that brings this. And by the way, I don't recommend anyone putting how many years they've been in the business.
Mm.
Bad, 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 because they can discriminate however they want, just as long as they don't verbally say it or write it down. And if you're
Yeah.
writing it down for them, they can discriminate against it. So, there's a lot of age discrimination going on and all sorts of things. So you don't want to give them that opportunity to knock you out of the running right off the bat. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Next thing, a lot of people argue back and forth about education. So, education, some people say it should be on the bottom of the resume, some people say it should be on the top. My theory, I have done it both, really didn't seem to make a difference. But my theory is if the job is requiring a degree and you have it, put it on top.
Mhm.
Not to mention the fact that if you have a degree, you should put it on top. You worked hard for that, you know, be proud of it. And not only that, but it'll kind of give them an idea of the level that you're at. So, and let them understand that you're open to learn. You took it upon yourself to go to school and get this degree. So you should be able to learn, our stuff, our skills, or advance your career, or take classes to improve yourself, things
Mhm.
like that. So up to you, but if you have a degree, put it on top. If you don't, put it on bottom.
Yeah. And do you put the degree, the year that you graduated? Like you can put your
No.
degree, right? But not the year, right? Because then people start doing the math.
Yes, exactly.
They're
Then
like,
you
okay,
get
this
that.
person is 60 years old, and I don't know if I want to hire a 60-year-old. Yeah.
Right. That's where you get that age discrimination thing. So don't put anything, all you put really is the name of the school and the degree title or, high school diploma at Lake Washington High School,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
A bachelor's degree at, Columbia University.
What
So
about like affiliations? Do you want to share your affiliation? Let's say you're part, I don't know, part of the Cherokee tribe or something, or you're part of an Asian cultural community. Do you want to put things like that on there that shows your, ethnicity and things like that?
it's kind of a toss up. It
Mm,
really kind of depends on what job you're going for. If it's a requirement, yeah. If
hmm
not, I would leave it out because, again, you're giving someone another opportunity to be discriminative,
hmm
you know? So I would leave it out, but I would save that information for the interview because
Okay.
that's one thing that they don't know about you that you can bring to the table.
Yeah. So have different versions of your resume and, leave something of interest to share at the interview, right? Um, so one of the questions that I always feel like people get stumped on is tell me about yourself. Where do I begin? I was born in 1939. So when you get that question, what are some of the things that you should say and not say?
So you should talk about your career. Never talk about your personal life, your family, you have kids, you're looking for a babysitter, your car broke down. Don't talk about any of that, right? Um, what you want to talk about is your career.
Hmm
So, and just speak it in general. I started off as an admin. I worked my way up. I got promoted to this. Then I decided to switch careers and go to this, and it really helped advance my career or my knowledge or my learning or whatever the case may be. That's how you want to answer that.
Do you find that men and women, and even non-binary job seekers behave differently, answer differently, when it comes to applying for a job, interviewing, and that kind of stuff? And I ask that because I read somewhere that, women will not apply for a position if they don't feel they're 100% qualified. Whereas men, they don't care. They're 30% qualified on the job description, they'll still apply. What's
Right.
your experience like?
It's been the same way. Men want to be direct and short to the point, get to the
Mm,
point. Women have a lot of feelings and emotions. And so they read that. When they're reading a job description, they're feeling whether they could actually do the job, if they have it all to give it all.
mm,
Right. So, what I always tell my clients is apply for the position. If you like it, apply. The worst they can do is say no,
yeah,
but you have no idea how much of that skill is actually part of the job. So, for instance, maybe it's Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, but you don't have PowerPoint. Well, PowerPoint is either 100% of the job, 75% of the job, or 5% of the job. You don't know that. So
yeah,
you're automatically eliminating yourself if you don't apply.
yeah.
Doesn't hurt to ask. And I want to go back to recruiters as well. You asked about, when you're interviewing, what else can you do to be prepared for that interview? When you are scheduling that interview with the recruiter, you can ask the recruiter, what type of person will I be interviewing with? Is there any tips or tricks you can give me, that can help me move forward, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you can also do that. You can also look them up on LinkedIn, see if you can get an idea of their history. Maybe there's some commonality there or something. So
right.
just wanted to go back to that.
Well, I think that's very important because, oftentimes we feel as the job seeker, we feel like, pick me kind of thing. but it is you picking them as well,
Hmm.
and if you have the skill set or if you have the ability to learn or if you have transferable skills, then your recruiter is your best friend. Like that's where you ask all the questions and be as prepared as you can. What should I wear? Can you give me insight into the parking situation? And, who will I be interviewing with in this first round so that you can do your due diligence and search, right? Dredge
Right.
information. So, okay, I want to pivot a little bit to today's world where social media is everything.
Oh my
I see
goodness.
that eye roll. How much does the social media part count in the job process?
Well, it used to not count at all, but now, and then we would hear stories about, somebody got fired because they were drunk at a party and posted a picture, right? Now it's even worse.
Hmm.
So now employers are looking at, does your resume match your profile? So
Hmm.
specifically on LinkedIn. So what I tell people, watch what you're saying on social media, lock it down, so nobody else can see what you're saying on social media, but definitely watch what you're saying. And then on the other hand, with LinkedIn, make sure that it matches your resume and also lock it down because the
Hmm.
employer will go and look. But and here's a perfect example. I had a candidate for a position. It was a really good job. He fit it perfectly. And so I interviewed him. I got him, sent him over to my colleague who had the relationship with the client. She sent it over to the client. She's like, oh my God, this guy's great. Sent it over to the client. The client came back and said, we're going to pass. And we
Hmm.
were like, why? Well, apparently she looked at his social media page, which we didn't do. And he was ranting and raving and had all these political views and religious views that were horrible,
Hmm.
absolutely horrible. And, I had to go back to him and say, you need to lock your page down because that just cost you a job. And
Yeah.
he's into his freedom of speech thing. But, well, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But this employer, you're representing this company and they
Right.
can't have that. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind too, that your image is part of their image if you're going to end up working for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having a private page and then a public outward facing page.
Right.
And I tell my authors that too, it's like have an author page that really talks about everything that is writerly, publishing your books, whatever. Let's not go into the politics, the religion, the key subjects that you're supposed to stay away from.
Right.
Um, but the other thing too is, when you're presenting yourself in a professional manner, you also want to make sure you have a headshot that is somewhat current, right? Not something that was 20 years ago, unless you still look the same, which bless you for. um, but like my authors, they're great, but sometimes they have five different platforms and every platform has a different picture of themselves, one with their dog, one with their cat, one with them, in pigtails. And so I don't know sometimes if I'm looking at the right same person because, how many
Right.
Elizabeth Moores are there? How many Amy Lees are there? Um,
Right.
so do you have any tips or advice on that front?
Yeah, use the same picture on everything.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
yeah, yeah.
And plus I really like my picture. But but yeah, I use the same picture on everything because it's really important if they can find you. If they can't find you and you're missing messages, especially on LinkedIn. I had that happen recently where one of my clients, I went to look him up. I thought it was the same guy. I sent him a link to something and he's like, I never got it. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, this actually isn't my link. So it's like, oh,
Mm, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I finally found it, but it's like you could be missing messages. They had the same name. Most of their information was the same, but different pictures. Totally
Mm,
two different guys.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So have you ever done a blank interview on people?
What do you
And
mean?
by blank interview, I mean two parts. One is it's a resume where you look at it for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and you immediately know whether
Hmm.
you want to pass or, go deeper. And with resumes, it's like I always look for, the bullet points and does each sentence start with a very strong action word, like manage or create, whatever.
Hmm.
So that's one piece. But the other blink interview I do is, when they actually come into the office and
Hmm.
interview with you. And right or wrong, you kind of get that feeling within the first 10 seconds whether this person's going to be a fit, a cultural fit for the company.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and that's a hard thing too, because you are who you are, but how can you kind of pass that first stage? um, yeah, because
Yeah.
we're discriminatory by nature and we stereotype by nature. So yeah. Any advice there?
Yeah. The ones that are more professional, on the phone or in person, are the ones that are more than likely to go forward with
Mm-hmm.
interviewing and things like that. I've had people, where I contacted them to do a phone interview with them, and it turned out, oh, well, I can tell you everything. You're my recruiter, and it's like, yeah, you still need to be professional.
Yeah.
No cuss words. That's a huge red flag.
Mm.
You know, make sure your spelling's correct in your resumes. That's a huge, huge thing. I'm with you. I like to see action words. Most employers want to see some kind of statistics or, cost numbers, how you've saved the company money, or help them earn more money, or they want to see numbers, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and then they want to see your level of responsibility too. So, with those types of interviews, once I have them on the phone, if they're asking me questions, I'm like excited,
Mm.
you know. If they're
Yeah.
not asking me questions and it's more like, it's their level of energy. If they
Yeah.
don't have that level of energy or that drive to really be engaged in a conversation, I can't move them forward. And it's
Yeah.
the same with them in person. There's rules, unwritten rules, when you go in for an interview. So, one thing I always tell my clients is you're basically being watched from the second you get there to the second you leave.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, the surrounding areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you want to be you want to be on your best behavior. If you're heading to that interview from the second you get in your car, you should be on your best behavior.
Yeah.
Be
I totally
professional.
agree. Because, that recruiter or that manager or whatever is going to ask the receptionist, is going to ask, the parking attendant. I mean, just you never know. So I agree. Yeah, be on your best behavior at all times.
Well, I have an example. There was one guy that was on his way to an interview. He had a flat or something, and he had to stop at the gas station to do something. And so he was just barking at people that were already in line
Mm,
and, being really impatient, and very rude to the guy that was in front of him or behind him. Or he was rude to the cashier. That's what
mm,
it was. So he got in his car and left and went to the interview. And, all of a sudden he's Mr. Nice Guy to the receptionist, and she has him sit down and wait for like 10 minutes past his interview time.
mm-hmm.
And the guy finally came out, and it was the guy that was standing in line behind him at the gas
Oh
station.
no. Oh no.
Yeah. So he said, "Thank you for your time. We won't be interviewing you today
Yeah.
or
That's
any other day."
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy was just dumbfounded. He's like, what just happened? And it was because he treated the cashier disrespectfully and
Yeah.
everybody else around him. And he saw
Ugh.
that firsthand. So, yeah, so you got to watch what you're doing. Be nice to people. Bottom line, be nice to people because you have no idea who that person is standing next to you in line,
Yeah.
you
Or
know?
that person might be your, your direct report in one day, and then next year is your boss. Like you just don't know. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how, one of the things that I did also was like I would scout the place out if I, had an interview, make sure I knew where I was going and that, whatever, I give myself extra time.
Yep.
But let's say, things happen beyond your control and you're going to be late. What do you do at that point?
You contact your recruiter or you call them
Mm-hmm.
and explain the situation. Say, I'm so sorry. I would be um, either I'm going to be late or, and give them a timeline or ask them if you could reschedule if it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be too long. But if they don't hear from you at all or you call them the minute you're supposed to be there, that doesn't work. You got to give them notice
Yeah.
that, you're going to be late, you're running late, whatever the case may be. But if you don't communicate with them and then you don't show up on time, that's automatic two strikes, you're out, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Crazy, crazy. Okay, so
Hmm.
what are some of the crazy questions that you like to ask? Because I remember going through stupid interviews and it's like, if the man cover is round, why is it round? And if you were a tree, what tree would you be? And what is the purpose of these types of questions?
Because they want to know how you think. They want to know what your problem solving skills are and
Hmm.
your patience level. So I hired for 100-seat call center. It was brand new, just coming up. I had no budget. My boss got fired like 2 weeks after I started. So I had to figure this out and get these positions filled as quick as possible. So I went to the unemployment office actually. And, employers can do events there to hire people
Hmm.
and they'll cover everything, give you a room or whatever. Well, I had a lot more people show up than I was expecting. And it
Hmm.
got to the end, I was running out of time. So I think I had 5 people in the room. And I asked them all one question: how do you deal with difficult people?
Hmm.
And depending on their answer, was the ones I hired right there on the spot, just from one question.
Yeah.
And those people turned out to be my best people. They got promoted up into lead and supervisor roles. It was amazing. But in answering that question, the answer is you listen.
Mm.
You listen to what they have to say, give them that opportunity. So, people are going to be calling, being upset, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a problem, they're yelling, they're screaming. Um, Listen. That's the first thing.
I think that's a very important skill to have, the listening
Hmm.
skills and the observation, be very observant of people and your surroundings and stuff like that. And, and everybody's going to define what a difficult person is differently. But
Right.
to your point, you can kind of handle it all the same way, right? It's just by listening. And I was listening to a podcast recently where, this lady was going into a hospital. She was having some medical issues, and she was like, "Oh no, I'm going to get this one particular nurse," which she knew about this nurse because she worked at that, hospital before,
Hmm.
and she was giving out that negative energy, like, "Oh my God, I don't want this nurse because they're so difficult, and they don't really quote unquote care for their patient."
Hmm.
Well, come to find out, this person had a really tough upbringing. Um, and she is the way she is because of that upbringing. And yet she chose to go into a field to help others, right? And so that gives you a
Hmm.
little bit of perspective. And I think it's super important to just take a moment to understand the person that you're interacting with before you judge, right? Or
Right.
or write them off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I consider people characters.
Yeah.
So you never know their story, what's behind them until you talk to them.
Right.
And somebody could be having a really bad day and don't have anybody to talk to, and they just need
Mhm.
to vent for a second and
Yeah.
then they're fine after that. Or There could be trauma that they're going through, you know. So I think I give people the benefit of the doubt, but I try to find something positive about them. But if nothing else, I'm learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what, you can learn from someone else constantly.
Absolutely. So if you weren't a recruiter, a career coach, an administrator, what would you be, Francis? What other skills
Well,
do you have?
well, I probably would have followed my dream, which I'm seriously considering now. But I would be a criminal prosecuting attorney or
Mm,
a judge.
why?
Mhm. I love the law.
Mm,
I love the law. I love the cases. My TVs are stuck on court TV right now.
mm,
Because I have been following case after case after case. And it's something I grew up with. Now, here's a lesson that I learned watching Perry Mason when I was younger.
nobody knows who
Perry,
he is these days, I
I
think.
know, I
We're
know,
dating
sad.
ourselves.
Perry Mason was oh, what was he?
Well, he was a TV character who
He
was,
was a TV character, but he was
uh,
an attorney, and every single time it was about a murder, and he was always the defense attorney for
mhm,
whoever, was murdered. So one thing that I learned about him is one, don't do bad things because you're going to get caught. You're going to get caught. Lying is the same way. It's a lot of work to lie. It's not that much work to tell the truth,
mhm.
right? And besides, you're going to get caught.
Eventually, yes.
Well, not even eventually. I mean, you don't know if somebody's watching you. You don't
Mhm.
know if you left some sort of forensic evidence. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're going to get caught. So that was the big lesson that I learned from him. And so when I see all these cases, it's like, oh my gosh, some of these criminals are just the dumbest things I've ever seen.
I love watching those shows where they like the world's dumbest, criminals.
Yeah, yeah, I watch those too. But yeah, that would be to be a judge would be my dream,
Mm.
I think. And
Okay,
I've
so what
already,
advice? Go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, I've already done 4 lawsuits by myself and won
Oh,
every single one without an attorney. So
wow.
I have
Uh,
the skill.
that's amazing. And I was gonna ask you, what advice do you have for someone who is pivoting? They're a seasoned professional, they've been doing one particular field or industry for 20 years, and they're doing something totally different now. How do you get into that door?
Yeah, it's all about the resume. That's what
Mm,
it's going to be about. So you have to make sure that the skills that you have are transferable to that role. And you
okay.
kind of have to explain why. If they see it in the resume and they do actually call you, by the way, I don't recommend waiting for them to call you. I suggest, after you've applied for a few days, you call them
Hmm.
because that shows that you're really interested in the position anyway. But yeah, it's more about just trying to get that information. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think another tip that I just thought of is, when you're applying for a job and you're tailoring your resume for that particular job or company, to really look at the job description and have some of those keywords in your resume, because before your resume ever gets to a recruiter, it's going to go through its own internal bot or algorithm system where it'll crawl the resumes, and then it'll say, oh, this one has SQL or whatever.
Right.
It's going to pull that resume and set it aside and send it to the recruiter, right? um,
Hmm.
anyway, so before we wrap up, I want to ask some lightning round questions for you. Are you up for that?
Sure. Go for
They're
it.
quick. They're quick. Okay. Resume objective statement, yes or no? I think we covered this already.
No, executive summary, yes.
One page or two, or how many pages should a resume be?
No more than two.
Okay,
It's your history needs to only go back 10 years. So no
got it.
more than 10 years. And then anything beyond 10 years, you put it in your skill section. So you should still show those skills.
Okay. And I think we covered this already, but follow-up email after an interview, how soon should you do that?
Same day. Absolutely.
Excellent. Remote versus office, in office. What are your thoughts on
Ooh,
that?
I'm a remote person. I love it. But it's each individual's own idea, what works best for them.
Yeah. And then coffee chat or cold emails.
Hmm. It depends on the circumstance.
Okay. What are the circumstances you think?
Well, coffee chat is if you're really wanting to get to know somebody on a different level.
Mm,
Um, and then the other one is more informal,
yeah. Yeah.
you know, just basic questions.
All right. Well, my dear, do we have any topics that you want to cover that we didn't cover, or any other tips or advice you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'll share some tips and advice. When you are applying for a job, make sure you track it on a spreadsheet or whatever. Copy the link, know what the position is, know what the company is, know what the pay is if it's available. So that if they do call you and you're caught off guard, you can quickly get to your computer, click on the link and scan the job before you start talking to them. You know what I mean? So you can kind of get that idea. When you're going into an interview, also go over the job description before you walk in the door. Then it'll be fresh on your mind and you will have questions ready to go, hopefully. Write down your questions before you go to an interview. Again, some may pop up, some may not. Make
Yeah.
sure you give the correct handshake. If you meet somebody in
Mm,
person, that's a big one. You don't want to do that wimpy thing like, oh, because that just comes across as, ew, I don't want to touch you. You're gross.
yeah.
And you don't want to do the knuckle breaker handshake either because they kind of think that you're out of control and you're going to be a liability to their company and their needs. So you want to give them a nice, firm handshake, not breaking their arm, just nice,
Yeah.
firm
A nice
handshake.
squeeze would be fine. Do you
Yep.
do two hands or one hand?
Um, Two hands is the sales handshake.
Mm,
So you go in for the handshake, and usually what a salesperson does is they tilt it. So the one that's on top is the dominant one.
hmm.
And if they grab it, that's another dominance kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
I
I'm
also
the
think
top dog.
I think it's important to know the cultural thing too, right? Like if you're interviewing with, let's say, a Japanese company, what's the proper way to greet them?
Hmm.
Versus, yeah. So do your research.
Yeah, exactly. Do your research. Make sure that you're being appropriate. Um, let's see, what else? Follow up is key. So do the email the same day. See
Hmm.
if you can get when are they going to make a decision. It is okay to ask that, by the way. When are they going to make the decision? Don't be afraid to call them and say, hey, have you made a decision yet? Where am I at in the process? It's going to show that you're still interested. A lot of times when I, talk to clients or candidates, I talk to them once and then I never hear from them again. And I have no idea if you got another job or not, but I always told my clients or my candidates, stay in touch with me. Because if you don't, I'm looking at thousands of people a day. I'm not going to remember you. But if
Hmm.
you keep contacting me, I'm going to have to keep pulling your stuff up. So now the next position that comes open, I'm going to think of you automatically,
Hmm.
right? Because you're
Yeah.
already in my head. So
Yeah.
keep following
Good.
up with people.
Okay.
Yep. And be proactive.
Any other advice? Do's and don'ts?
Mm, don't chew gum. Don't
Oh, yes.
smoke before an interview. Don't be loud. I did have an executive admin lose a job because of that. She was very loud. And make sure you answer the question.
Hmm.
She was kind of vague. Oh, yeah, I've done that before. Oh, yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years. Oh, yeah. But she never answered the question,
Yeah.
so make sure you answer the question. Remain calm. And it is okay to breathe. So, I've had instances where they walked out of the room. It was a panel interview. They walked out for a minute and I took a deep breath and prayed.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
think
when
eye
they came back, I was
contact is
calm.
important. Um, eye contact is important. And then
Oh, yeah,
cologne, perfume, yes, no.
none,
Lotion.
none. I mean, lotion, yeah, but non-fragrant.
Mm-hmm.
Usually by the time you get there, it kind of fades off anyway. But yeah, no lotion, no fragrances. You have no idea who's allergic to it. And actually, I can tell you, one of my family members smells anything, passes out immediately.
Mm.
She has some strange allergy. I have no idea what it was, but yeah, if somebody lights a candle, a scented candle, she'll pass out.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you just want to be careful and be respectful of other people's space.
So if people have more questions or need help, where do they contact you? How do they find you?
Well, they can email me at smorecc@live.com. So
Okay.
it's SMOORECC@live.com.
Okay. So I understand CC is probably career coaching. What's
Career
the
consulting.
okay? What's the S for s'more?
Some more because we could all use some more.
All right. I love it.
You want some more staffing? You want some more recruiting? You want some more candidates?
I love it. I love it, Francis. Well, it's been such a joy catching up with you and learning more about the recruiting process and the coaching. I'm gonna turn to our listeners now and wrap up our podcast. Listeners, well, actually, we hope that you learned a lot today with Francis S'more. And we hope that you land your dream job. So it's all about clarity and strategy, preparation, mindset. So from crafting resumes that rise to the top to mastering the art of storytelling in interviews, Francis reminds us that confidence is built through preparation and
Yep.
authenticity. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend who's job searching, who's career pivoting, who is just ready for their next professional leap. So be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow Quixotic Heights for more conversations that challenge convention and inspire growth. And until next time, keep pursuing your own Quixotic Heights. Thank you, Francis, for being with us today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.